Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, I'm looking at the first Star Trek movie, Star Trek the Motion Picture, which is a horribly prosaic title for the movie. It's got no riz at all. Star Trek's an interesting phenomenon, not only in television and cinema history, but in American history as well. It was first posited in 1964. It was in that post-John F. Kennedy liberal tradition. And the TV series, which did run for 3 years, did express opinions on very important matters like racism, war, the dangers of technology, the dangers of othering other people, and a whole bunch of other things. It did it very subtly because there were a lot of gatekeepers on American television in the 1960s. You only have to read Harlan Ellison's books of essays, The Glass Teat, to know the kind of prudishness that prevailed in 1960s American television. But Star Trek maneuvered through that. The seasons weren't incredibly successful because the TV network kept moving around the time slot, which is never a good thing for the longevity of a particular franchise. So in 1969, the third season happened, Star Trek ended. There was in the 1970s an animated version that Filmation did. And then 8 years after Star Trek, the TV series ended, they were talking about doing a follow-up series called Phase 2 and bringing in a new Vulcan character, keeping it on the Enterprise, but just moving on without the stars of the previous series. Didn't happen. Paramount suddenly decided it wanted to make a feature film. 1977 was when they were positing Phase 2, and they got some scripts written and things like that, some of which were recycled into Star Trek The Next Generation. But Star Wars hit in 1977 as well, and so Paramount went, yeah, it's science fiction, we can do that. And they decided to make Star Trek The Motion Picture. It was going to be directed by Robert Wise, a director who made a whole bunch of very good films, but a director who I don't really like. He's one of the guys who butchered Orson Welles' Magnificent Ambersons and shot some new scenes for it. And so I'll always have a grudge against him. He also made Sound of Music, which I've never really watched all of, but I've watched enough bits of it to know that it's not to my taste. So they brought back the gang. They got back the original actors from the original television series. And there's an interesting kind of range of acting styles in that original ensemble. You've got Shatner, who's very theatrical and had been a Shakespearean actor amongst other things, and drew attention to himself as much as possible. One of the things I always had a problem with most of Shatner's acting, up until maybe the 1990s or even further, is that his performance draws attention to his performance. It always does. And if you look in Star Trek, the motion picture, there are about 4 or 5 moments that I noticed where Shatner's gaze looks directly down the barrel at the camera to get the audience to look at him. It's a little trick, but he does it about 4 times in the movie. No other actor does it. Shatner does. He may be looking off to somebody and talking to somebody off screen, but then his eyes will dart to the camera, kind of like this. He's talking to the actor like that. And it draws attention to itself once you notice it, particularly given the fact that I do have this movie on 4K with HDR. And it looks crisp. You still see the matte lines on various things and that the limitations of 1970s special effects are still there. But you notice Shatner's actively tricks a lot more watching it on this one. I've also got the movie in a 6-disc box set of all of the films, or at least the ones that have the old team in it. So you got Shatner, the theatrical actor with the ego. Then you've got Leonard Nimoy, a Ukrainian descended guy, so Slava Ukraine, who was a method actor. He was more in the method tradition, so his style of acting is quite different than Shatner's and has, to be really honest with you, a lot more depth. He gets into character, whereas Shatner projects character in a very theatrical way. Then you got DeForest Kelley, been a jobbing actor in films for about 2 decades before he hit as Leonard McCoy in Star Trek. He'd done film noir. He played Morgan Earp in Gunfight at the OK Corral for John Sturges alongside Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster. He'd been in a number of westerns. He was like a jobbing character actor, bit player in some cases. And he knew how to make the most of a moment. You got James Doohan, a Canadian radio actor who'd gone into television. He was at D-Day and was an infantryman at D-Day during World War II and actually took out a machine gun nest. The guy's got nothing to prove, and he brings a groundedness to Scotty in Star Trek. Got Nichelle Nichols, who started out as a big band singer at the end of the big band era, working for Duke Ellington's band, amongst other things, and she'd been a model. She brought a dignity and gravitas to Uhura, and it later parlayed that into encouraging women of colour to go into STEM education, things like that. So all credit to her. And she's also fantastic in Truck Turner. And you got George Takei. He went into politics after doing Star Trek. Very much an advocacy for LGBTQIA plus people to this very day. You got Walter Koenig as well, another character actor who turned up and probably did his best work after Star Trek in Babylon 5, playing Bester, the telepath. But again, apparently a decent guy, decent actor, didn't get the breaks that some other actors got, and also was given any number of bad wigs during the tenure of the Star Trek movies. So Star Trek in the 60s was about American expansionism and idealism and exceptionalism. In some ways it was to science fiction what The West Wing was to politics. It was an idealized version of it that allowed the creators to express certain ideas about certain things and to run thought experiments about the perils of various things and the opportunities of various things. So the movie had a budget of $44 million, made $139 million ultimately. So it was a very successful film. I remember when we first saw it back in 1979, and people were shocked by the look of the Klingons with the crocodile back heads on them, the headpieces, and the look of them being alien and them speaking their own language, which was made up by Jimmy Doohan and was expanded on later by Michael Okuda. That was a shock to see Klingons that didn't just look like character actors in blackface, that they looked alien, they looked like they had their own culture. And the design of their spaceship and the design of the readouts on their computers on the spaceship were very distinctive, based on triangles rather than rectangles, the way human interfaces are. That stuff really landed well. The start of Star Trek the Motion Picture had some real wow moments for an audience in 1979. There's also a cute bit where a monitoring station translates the Klingon into English using a computer the size of a Pong cabinet. That's kind of dated now and looks a bit clunky. But again, this is 1979. The plot's basically a retelling of the Changeling episode in Star Trek, the original series. Yeah, and a space probe comes back, is incredibly powerful. It turns out to be a terrestrial space probe that's come back with an upgrade and wants to find the creator of the space probe so it can download the information it's gathered on its journey through the universe. That part's a bit disappointing because there's no villain in the piece. There's no antagonist against whom the characters we know and love can play off. The closest thing we get to an antagonist is Persis Kambata with a robot voice. And that doesn't really land in the same way in the second movie. You've got a protagonist who overacts as strongly as Shatner does in Ricardo Montalban. I may well cover Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, in a future video, because I think there's a lot more to say and a lot more meat on the bone in that movie than there is on this first one. So you've got a couple of additional characters who are disposable. You know they're not going to be there for future movies, were future movies to be made. Of course they were, but we didn't know that in 1979. You've got Illia, played by Persis Kambata, an Indian actress who wasn't particularly gifted as an actress, but had a distinctive look that gave her a certain career. She'd started out as a Miss India in 1965 and then went on to make some Bollywood movies and then went to California and made this movie and a whole bunch of very forgettable science fiction films after that. And then you have Stephen Collins, the most problematic person in the ensemble, who you might want to just Google Stephen Collins's transgressions. I'm not going to talk about them on the channel. So you got Shatner, the theatrical actor, Leonard Nimoy, the method actor. You got the character actors, James Doohan and DeForest Kelley. You got Nichelle Nichols with her gravitas and her dignity. And you've got George Takei and Walter Koenig. And then you've got Stephen Collins. He's daytime soap opera level acting. He's no better than that. His character has no emotional intelligence at all. And it makes you wonder why Starfleet would give him a ship to run when what he seems to be is an engineer who knows everything about the ship and knows nothing about managing his own feels. That's a weak character in the movie. And the arc of that character doesn't play particularly well because we really don't like him. Not because he argues with Kirk, but because he doesn't have the dignity to argue without getting angry about the fact that Kirk's bumped him out of the main seat and has taken over because there's an existential threat to the Earth coming. So that really doesn't work. And the knowing what I know now about Stephen Collins makes me like the character even less. And there's no particular chemistry between his character and the Illia character, even though the backstory is that they had a relationship on Delta. And she's from a planet of women who apparently make heterosexual men horny automatically. And so she's taken a vow of celibacy by being in Starfleet, which seems to be an egregious thing to do to somebody, even if they do exude pheromones that act in a Viagra-style way on human males. I mean, that's a them problem, not a her problem in a reasonable world. And seems to be something that Roddenberry, being the Playboy era man he was, thinks is a cool thing to have in a movie. There's also the fact that the monitoring station was just destroyed by the V'Ger probe. Gives a data download to the Enterprise about this cloud of energy and plasma that's coming towards the Earth. And in that report, they say that the thing is 2 astronomical units wide. And nobody says anything about that afterwards until it gets near Earth. And even if it got into the solar system, a cloud of energy with a probe in the middle of it and all the rest of the shit coming into the solar system is going to knock comets loose all the way through the Oort cloud. It's probably going to disrupt the planetary orbits of all the planets in the solar system. And it's going to basically just mess shit up. That I didn't like. Don't go using large numbers when you don't know what the large numbers actually mean. Then, of course, we'll get to the special effects, because if 1977 taught the wrong lesson to Hollywood, which it did, that lesson is special effects are what people go to science fiction movies to see. They don't go for story, they don't go for character. They go to see zoom, zoom, bang, bang special effects. And so they ladled in the special effects into the bowl of soup that is Star Trek the Motion Picture, and didn't leave any room for meat and vegetables. Those slow scenes as the Enterprise approaches V'Ger and the slow scenes as Kirk approaches the Enterprise in a shuttle are just stultifyingly dull. Yes, show us what the new Enterprise looks like. Do that. Don't spend 10 minutes doing it with reaction shots from Jimmy Doohan and William Shatner to give you the wow factor. It just doesn't work. It drains the energy from the movie and drains the forward momentum of the movie. This is something that's happening urgently. There's something malevolent approaching the Earth. And then they spend 10 languid minutes showing off special effects shots of the Enterprise. It's stupid. It's unnecessary. It could have been done incredibly better. Not from a technical point of view, because the special effects were okay from a 1979 point of view, but from the momentum and the pace of a movie. And that again happens as the Enterprise approaches V'Ger. There's just a slowing down of the action when it should be ramping up, and the pace should be going like that. It's going. Totally stupid. Yes, the special effects techs, including John Dykstra and Doug Trumbull, worked on them, I think. Could be wrong. But they did a great job. But the effect shots were bloody endless. And that's the reason there's that joke about Star Trek the Motionless Picture. Because the forward momentum of the movie is slowed down by the endless special effects shots, which Hollywood thought were what the audiences wanted. There's also the problem with the ensemble too. Yes, there is the arc of Spock regaining his human side during the events in the movie. There's McCoy coming back to the Enterprise, and he looked better with that big bushy beard on, to be honest with you. But the other actors didn't get anything. A lot of that time spent on the special effects shots could have been given to Walter Koenig and George Takei and Jimmy Doohan and Nichelle Nichols to give their characters a little bit of backstory and a little bit of extra grounding. I mean, we want to know what happened to those characters in the 10 years since the first Star Trek series, but we don't find that out. We do if we read novels that have been made about Star Trek, because a lot of the novels did fill out that and fulfill the need that the audiences had for characters they loved to get their backstory more and to find out who they were and what they were doing. According to some of the actors, that was impeded a lot by William Shatner's need to be front and center at all times. That's an insecurity. I'll be honest with you, I never really dug Shatner as an actor, as a person. I think that he worked against the projects he worked on so many times to feed his own ego. I'd never liked that. I mean, he did do good work. He's very good in Judgment at Nuremberg. He's very good in The Intruder, the racism movie that Roger Corman made in the early 1960s, where his theatrical tendencies worked toward the story rather than against it. I don't even know if he's the best James T. Kirk. I think that Chris Pine did a much better job and gave us a much more fun Kirk than Shatner ever did, because he's always looking at that mirror. He's always looking directly down the bore of the camera to feed his ego. And I think that when you're in an ensemble series or an ensemble series of movies like Star Trek, you've got to put your ego aside and work for the ensemble and work for the group telling the story. William Shatner, for whatever reason, seemed very much incapable of that. And then we get to the climax where the Enterprise bumps up against Vija's core, and there's an atmosphere and there's gravity there. So the main crew go down and climb over all of those hexagonal little pads to get to Vija and find out it's actually a Voyager probe that's encountered a machine civilization somewhere in space and has been upgraded by it. There's a couple of things with that one. First off, why did they give them these ugly tunics to wear when they did that? They got these ill-fitting tunics that really don't look good at all. They're bloody fugly, to be honest with you. And that kind of puts me out, a $44 million movie, at least get a bloody tailor in to do this. But they didn't. And then you get to the silly part where the Vija unit, which has replaced Illia, and Decker basically have a cosmic bonk. They merge together, they become one, and Vija then evolves into a post-human, transcendent creature and disappears from the universe. $44 million, and the movie basically ends on a bonk with a robot. Okay, it's 1979. It's still a weird era. And the movie reflects that in so many ways. And of course, you got Jerry Goldsmith's score, which is great, particularly the motifs that he gives to the Klingon spaceships, and that kind of drumbeat, percussive part of the soundtrack is fantastic. I love that. The original theme, of course, was reused for Star Trek The Next Generation, because why waste a good thing? The other thing that I got from this movie, which is something that I find fascinating, and there's whole websites about this, is how wrong William Shatner's wig looks. There's no human hairline, anything like that, and when he turns around, the back of it's no better. They also did that with Walter Koenig and give him a weird-looking wig, which I think they borrowed from Jessica Walter in Play Misty for Me. Shatner's wig drew attention to itself while I was watching that movie this time around. It didn't sit well on me, and it didn't sit well on Shatner. I've got a fascination with bad wigs and comb-overs in 1970s movies, and this movie fed into that mild obsession that I have for those kind of things. If you look at episodic television in the 1970s, there's an encyclopedia of bad comb-overs in those movies, and the hairdressers must have spent millions of hours just getting those comb-overs just right for many, many actors in many, many TV series and movies in the 1970s. It became an art form all of its own. And that's somebody who has a bald spot. I kind of go, just wear it, just own it, just be yourself and do your acting. And don't worry about it. I mean, Patrick Stewart, of course, being the poster boy for fuck it, I'm bald. Yeah, that kind of stuff is insecure and distracting. And I don't like it. I'm fascinated by it, but I don't like it. In the same way I'm fascinated with Mission Impossible movies, but I don't like Tom Cruise. Weird wigs and weird comb-overs are one of the things in cinema that make me think about something else beside the plot and the story of a movie. So just to summarize on Star Trek the Motion Picture, those special effects scenes, adept though they were for 1979, were crazily too long. It's nice seeing the ensemble back together, and particularly DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy and Nichelle Nichols, to a certain extent, carried that let's get the band back together thing and carried the emotional weight of that, whereas Shatner was reacting to draw attention to his performance. People may disagree with that, but I found it odd, and I found it took away from that feel good you get when you see an ensemble of characters you know quite well get back together. When one person demands the spotlight be on them, it lessens the impact of that story. Overall, watching the movie, I enjoyed it. 4K is a nice transfer, and the HDR works, even if it does, to a certain extent, draw attention to itself from the matte lines and things like that were an inevitable part of special effects technologies in the 1970s. It's still good. It was remastered and restored very well. And this is the director's edition, which is slightly longer, but does give a little bit more of the character beats than the other version I've got on this box set of the 6 Star Trek old crew movies. Star Trek the Motion Picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, The Voyage Home, The Final Frontier, and The Undiscovered Countries. And The Undiscovered Country. Let me know if you want me to do more of these movies and do a deep dive into more of them, because I find them interesting, and even the bad ones among those movies, there's something to say about them. I mean, I like Star Trek. I like the utopian world of Star Trek, even though the later series have drifted from that and have taken things away from the idealization of the Federation as a utopia. I like a franchise that at its basis is about, we build a utopia. What are the flaws in that? What are the opportunities in that? What kind of people inhabit that kind of a world, or that kind of a number of worlds? I think that's an interesting thing to reflect on and to show in a dramatic way, particularly in the world we live in at the moment, where things are not utopian one tiny bit. And also, a post-scarcity world where money is not a thing. Economics seems to work in a very different way, even though, of course, the subsequent series drew that back a bit, because, you've got to support capitalism, don't you, particularly if you're a movie studio. I like that idea of a post-scarcity world where people go out to explore other places that aren't necessarily in the same fortunate situation. So that's what I got for you this time around. Star Trek the Motion Picture. Let me know if you want me to do Wrath of Khan, because I'd like to match it up with rewatching Space Seed and back to backing the original Khan Noonien Singh and the one we see in Wrath of Khan. I think that might be a bit of fun to do. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Leave a comment, tell me what you think of Star Trek the Motion Picture. And yes, I know it's slow. Give me a little bit more than just it was slow. You'd also support the channel by becoming a channel member, by becoming a patron at patreon.com/terrytalksmovies, and also by donating directly through YouTube. Next up, I've got the Monday video, and I've got some interesting things for that. And then we have the Wednesday video, and we have Science Fiction Saturday once more next weekend. On my other channel, I've got a video that I just released about a very long bus trip I took without ever leaving Melbourne. It took 4 hours and 50 minutes, and I never left Melbourne, and it only cost me $2.50. So you might want to check that one out if you're not subscribed to my other channel, Terry Travels. I've just started it, and I'd love some subscribers. So until next time, when I'm going to be doing some more older movies, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, check out some Star Trek movies, and I dare you not to fast forward through the slow bits. And I'll catch you next time.